Hey, welcome to the Leslie and Lisa show. Today's hot topic is, should we stick with hot topics?
Plus, we have a casting director extraordinaire.
Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Leslie and Lisa show.
Hey, welcome to the Leslie and Lisa show. As always, we're going to talk about anything and everything because nothing is off limits. Hi, Lisa. I don't know. I really wanted to sing it. I wanted to go off limits. That was probably so loud, everybody just tuned out.
No, I don't think it was that loud, but still people probably tuned out.
Probably.
Hi, Les.
Hi, Lisa. How you doing today?
I am doing well, except I'm going to be really honest. I don't think I slept last night.
Really? Why?
I had one of those nights where I was hyper aware of not being asleep the entire night.
Yep.
So I kept like opening my eyes and like my dogs were moving all over the place. And I mean my actual dogs, not my feet. You know, when people say my dogs are barking.
I hadn't even gone there, but now I understand.
Okay.
Anyways, dogs not. By the way, I know what you mean. I think we all have this every once in a while. And you're constantly like, stop it. Go to bed.
Go to sleep.
Which makes it even worse because you're
Right.
like, stop telling me to go to sleep.
Right. It was,
And
and
you have an
then
argument with yourself and
very frustrating. But otherwise, I'm fantastic.
it's probably why. So do you have like 2 cups of coffee with you today?
Well, it's funny. So I had only 1.5 cups of coffee. Normally I have 3. But
Wait, you have 3 cups of coffee in the morning?
yeah, I have 2 in the morning. Then my husband gets up and makes a pot and I have one of his cups.
Wow. And
Yeah.
all caffeinated.
Right. But so today I'm going to have to fake the caffeine because I'm a mess. My stomach's not good. So I'm trying not to drink coffee. So I have my hot tea, but then I also have water.
Well, you know what? You're such a big coffee drinker. Perhaps you need to get some of this new medicine that Dave Grohl has come up with. It's called Fresh Products.
Okay. I think I've seen an advertisement for that.
Have you seen that?
Maybe we should put the link.
It has all kinds of weird side effects, but they're kind of fun. Who doesn't want a little Oxford comma in their life?
I think we should put the link to that video at the end of this.
Oh, we totally will.
Yeah.
And then
All
obviously
right.
these days we're going to have him on the show, whether he likes it or not.
So we were going to talk about
about not having hot topics. So here's the thing. And you viewers should weigh in. So we always start off the show with a hot topic. And I don't know, you and I were trying to decide today whether we do it. The problem is we have such great guests that we don't feel that we have the time to really address these hot topics. Opinion?
my opinion is that what you just said is right, because what happens is we pick a hot topic, but then we never really get into it. We kind of
just graze over it.
Yeah, we skim it and then we get to the guest. So I think we should do more shows. I think we should do more shows that are just you and I.
Doing hot topics because we're so opinionated anyways.
But then
get it all out.
Yes. Let our guests take the bulk of the time of the show. Yes?
Yes.
And you know what I like about this? I like that we're not doing it behind the scenes. We're not trying to hide anything from anyone. What we're doing is saying it's an evolving show.
Correct.
It's a living entity.
Oh, living entity. You're so profound.
Aren't I though?
Mm.
So with that in mind, Leslie, our guest is here. Yeah.
She is?
Yes.
So I'm so excited to have her. She is, as you said at the top of the show, a casting director extraordinaire. She has cast some of the biggest shows on television, probably the biggest. Ed.
Yep.
Yep, I was in that.
Yep.
Anyway, she cast Suits, probably even more famous because of Meghan Markle.
Right.
Suits. Cast the Drew Carey Show, News Radio, Mad About You. She's been in the business forever. We are happy to have her. She is Bonnie Zane. Bring her into the waiting room.
Oh,
Bonnie Zane's. Oh, there she is.
hello.
Hi, guys.
How are you?
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Bonnie, I'm so happy you're in a bedroom because now it makes me not the only one.
I'm in my basement. This is actually a basement. I'm in
Wait,
nothing.
you live
I'm
in Los Angeles. How do you have a basement?
a basement. Yeah.
How?
Laurel Canyon.
Oh, yeah. She lives in the fancy Laurel Canyon.
I guess that's right. They call Laurel Canyon the back east of Los Angeles.
Wait, so
Okay.
Leslie, you're like are you in a bathroom?
No, I'm in my, God, I wish I had, imagine if I had a palm tree and some candy in my bathroom. No, I'm in my little tiny nook of an office.
Have you watched any of Leslie Jones's Twitter feed when she comments on the backgrounds of everyone on the news? It's
No.
genius. It is.
You know what? Like, did that just start because all of a sudden we're all on Zoom and everybody's in their house, living room, bathroom, whatever?
It started with Steve Kornacki, who everyone was obsessed with, and then she became obsessed with all the guests and breaking down like she would hate my background.
Well,
like,
what's
Lisa,
What's so funny about that, Bonnie, is that Leslie has admitted freely that she notices everything in a background in these Zoom calls. I kind of don't. I just notice the person, but Leslie's like nitpicking everything.
Because I'm so detail oriented. Like, I'm the woman, by the way, this has nothing to do with anything, but back in the day when I was on Tinder, you'd swipe to a picture and it'd be like some cheesy shot, usually of some guy taking a selfie or whatever of himself in the bathroom, just so his chest. I wasn't looking at him. I wasn't looking at his body. I was zooming in to look at the grout on his sink. What's in his bathroom? Does it look dirty? And that's the shit I was looking at.
Yeah, Head and Shoulders.
Yeah.
Looking for Head and Shoulders.
Bathroom, I was like, swipe left. Wait, what did you say?
Head and Shoulders dandruff shampoo. Now this is the basement. This is my guest bed. Behind it is a cushion that I use outside that is inside.
Okay.
And that's a closet right there.
By the way, have you learned that on Zoom, everything's difficult because it's opposite?
Yes.
I kind of now feel for the weatherman.
Yes. Well, Steve Kornacki.
Calmly.
Exactly.
I love him. I think everybody started having a deep, deep crush on him.
You should read his Salon article. He wrote this beautiful article about 10 years ago about his coming out, and he came out late in life. And it is a beautifully written article. And it's also about how he's like this crazy sports fanatic and statistician, as we could assume. And now today they just announced he got a job for Sunday Night Football. They'll be using him.
Wait, on Fox or CBS?
I don't know. It's on the news though. I saw it, but I'm so happy for him because I love him.
I love
That's
that.
adorable.
Okay, so by the way, being as though Bonnie's a caster, she knows everyone in this town. So she'll just throw out a million names. You and I are like, what? Who? What?
I'm sure.
I don't know Steve Kornacki. So
wait.
Well,
I'd buy him
now.
I'm going to get right into it, Les, and ask Bonnie a question that I want to ask that maybe you don't want me to ask, but I'm going to anyway. But Bonnie, so you cast Ed, which by the way, it has like less, I don't even know if you know what a cult following Ed has, because I see people tweet about it all the time. Where is it? Why can't I find it? It's my favorite show. So I would love you to speak about that, Bonnie, if you know why it can't be found. But also I want to know how Leslie got her part on Ed.
Okay. Well, first of all, I don't know if I think you can get it on YouTube.
I don't think you can. I've looked.
I watched an episode on YouTube when we were going to do the reunion.
Oh, you did?
So I think it's on there. Casting that pilot was joyful and long. It took forever. We started in 97, wasn't it? Yeah. Yep. So I started before Christmas in 97, and Rob and John hired me on a phone call. They never met me. We never met. It was like around October, November. And they just said, start working. And I started by myself. I was just looking for Ed.
Okay.
And I read Tom within the third session. And that was the days when you had to like upload it and turn it to a VCR or a tape, and then I would FedEx it to them, and it was this very long process of casting.
Actually, if you wouldn't mind, Bonnie, going back for a second, just for all the people who have no idea about this part of the entertainment industry.
is nothing gets made. I mean, yeah, you write a script and you sell it, but then the truth of the matter is, to the casting director, I mean, you go out and find the entire cast. You go
Yeah.
Right. So back then in 97, how did that happen? Are
Slowly.
So Rob Burnett and John
Beckerman.
Beckerman interview you, hire you. Now you are tasked with casting this show. So the first thing you do is what?
Find the lead. Find the lead. So I put out what we call a breakdown, searching high and low for people to tell me who's right for the part. I mean, the list, if you look back at the list of the people we entertained for these roles, it was pretty crazy.
Like,
I know you're going to make me do that. I didn't have it prepared. I was doing it with John in my office one day. We were looking back at the folder of all the people that had read for us. And it was a lot of big names. And I don't have it in front of me. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It comes to you.
Anyhow, we cast Tom early. Not early. I saw him right away. I called the guys and I said, this is it. This is the guy. And they watched the tape. They go, you're right, but keep looking. So
was Tom hadn't done, none of us had really done a lot up until.
No, Julie had, but Julie actually wasn't cast originally.
Right.
So Tom had done a pilot called The 900 Lives of Jackie Fry, something like that. And but nothing really, no. And so I knew he was the guy, but we kept going and going and going. And finally we were getting ready to test. And the process is back then you physically go into the network and you test in front of a panel, like Flashdance.
Right.
And, but you're in a dark room. And this was CBS because it was originally a CBS pilot. So Tom tested against like 4 other guys. So each of these people are reading it, the same scene for all these people, with me reading opposite them. So I'm sitting in this little chair in front of them and they're on the little stage. It's a tiny little screening room. And the day before, Rob and John hadn't even flown in. I still haven't even met them live. And so I spent an hour with each actor the day before practicing. We just did a whole rehearsal. And I ended up talking to Tom for hours. And I was working out of my office at Disney, which I was casting Sports Night at the same time. So I had this little office.
Holy cow.
And I just had it, I felt it in my bones that it was Tom. So he said to me before we went in, because one of the scenes we were doing was him and his wife breaking up. And that was, I'm reading opposite him. So he said to me, do me a favor. And when she starts to cry in the scene, just look down so I can get the feeling. And I said, okay, so we're reading it. We're with, 20 people in the room and we're reading it. And I just started crying. He just made me cry. And I just was like my tears are running down my face during the scene. And it was so authentic. It was so organic. And that was it.
That was it.
And so then we're like, okay, let's cast the rest of it. We got him. Let's cast the rest of this cast. And Leslie
did not make her cry, by the way.
Leslie did not make me cry, but Leslie made me beg. Leslie made me beg because I really wanted her for the part. And she says, no, it's his best friend. It's like, there'll be fat jokes. And I'm not interested in that. So I got on the phone with her lovely manager, Rick. And I said, let me talk to her. And we were friends. I mean, we were always friendly. I said, let me just talk to her. And I think that Rob and John might have spoken to you as well. And
I don't know if they talked to me beforehand, but certainly we had long talk about it afterwards.
Yeah, but beforehand, I remember having the conversation saying, no, this is a beautiful ensemble. And it was really coming together. We had gotten Josh, we had gotten Jenna Marie. We had gotten someone else for the part of Carol. And then they went with Julie even before we started filming. They decided Julie had a deal at ABC and they bought her out of her deal. Les Moonves at CBS bought her out of her deal. And then we were working on this role. I remember who it came down to? I'd have to look at my notes, but I think it was you and Carney Wilson.
Oh, really? No way. Oh, yeah, I think you might be right.
Oh, how funny.
It may have been. But anyhow, I remember talking to you and explaining to you that this was not, it was not a sight gag. It was actually going to be a character. And it was an important character. And it turned out to be an important character and a beloved character. And I think that they did a great job of serving all the characters on the show.
The funny thing is, I do remember, and I don't know if we're supposed to say, do you remember what Les Moonves said to you after I walked out of the room?
No.
You don't remember this?
No.
I remember you calling me and saying, listen, you did a great job. And, you know, everything was great. But I will tell you, she goes, you walked out of the room and Les was like, is she fat enough?
Oh,
and
I don't remember that.
It's going to be plenty good. She's going to be up against Julie Bowen. It'll be just.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, so crazy. I mean, I get it, especially back then. You know, things were so much more stereotyped back then. You know, the business is everything about the business today is so different. And it affects you, I'm sure, in such a strange way, because back in the day, there was one entry point into this business. You needed a manager or an agent, and without it, you were getting nowhere.
Right.
And today, there's a million different entry points. You can get in any way. You know, it's such a. So speak to that. I mean, there's so many other things we want to talk to you about casting. Obviously, you cast Suits. And were you invited to Meghan Markle's wedding?
You mean Rachel Zane, the character's name?
Oh, right.
I didn't get the invite. But we did have a brief exchange before the wedding.
Aww.
Yeah, I'm very happy for her. You want to talk about?
What's it like if somebody wants? You know, I mean, can you just go on YouTube and people send you tapes, or you just look for people?
It depends on the role. Okay, it depends what we're looking for. If I am looking for the lead and it's a 30-something or a 40-something or older, we know these people. We know them. And if you're going to be on a TV show and you're going to be leading a show on a network or on a streaming service, you're going to have some sort of weight behind you. Now, with younger people, with teenagers and with kids, and you're scouring everything from community theater to school plays to all of that stuff. And now it's all like, I'm about to start casting teenagers on this new series, and it's going to be just that. It's going to be kids because everyone's home. So it's going to be these kids just sending tapes from their homes. And that's what it mostly is anyhow.
I mean, would you go flip through TikTok to look for people,
or Instagram, or?
Well, I was doing the pilot I was doing before lockdown. Right when lockdown started, we were still ambitious enough to keep casting. And I found a girl on Twitter who was making these YouTube videos that were hilarious. And it was her talking to herself. It was like me talking to myself last month, and it was the pandemic stuff. And I thought she was great and really cute. And I needed this younger sister role. And I reached out to her. I found her and I reached out to her agents. And we did a talk like this. And then she auditioned by herself and we talked about it. And then the pilot is like, you know, dying on the vine somewhere, I'm sure. But it's going to be a different world now.
Yeah.
I think that as far as the bigger names, you're still going to go the regular route and go through agents and managers and lawyers and all of that.
But does it matter to you or to the producers if people have a certain amount of followers already? Even if, no, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't translate. It translates maybe. I think the research has been done. And I don't know post-pandemic what will happen, but before the research, I remember saying to an executive once, I wanted this young girl for a role. And I said, she's got like over 1 million Twitter followers or Instagram followers, whatever. He says, it doesn't translate. We've had all the research done. People will tune in initially, but you got to keep them there.
Absolutely.
And that's not going to keep them there. Now,
that's great news for Leslie.
It really does for us, or at least for me. That makes me feel so much better because I really am completely inept at social media. Anyway.
Yeah, but it's also like, but people are. You have a following, and if you are established, it helps. They make people do a lot of live tweeting or live Insta or Insta live and all that stuff, while their shows are, I think it's like contractual sometimes.
Absolutely.
By the way, when I was on Agent Carter, they were like, all right, we want you to we want you to do stuff, whatever. And I was like, what? I don't know what. So anyways, I got it. Sure enough, I'm on set, like live tweeting, thinking I'm doing, somebody runs over to me, grabs my phone. I'm like, what'd I do? And I guess I had my locations on, and Marvel is like super highly secretive. Can't know what you're doing, where you are.
Yeah.
They, like, confiscated my phone, changed all the settings on my phone, and then gladly gave it back to me. And they're like, now you can tweet. And I was like, I'm sorry. What did I do?
Wow.
I love it. But by the way, I would assume that some of the most talented actors have no idea how to do that stuff, or even how to do
or even interested.
Interested. But if it's part of the job now, it's part of the job now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember, on Suits had this huge cult following, and we always had to remind the actors, you have to be very careful with social media. And I remember one of the actors posted a picture, and it was the law firm sign behind him. And that's part of the mythology of the show, is that the law firm name changed frequently because there was always takeovers and stuff. So they posted a picture on Instagram or Facebook, and it was a new name before the season started.
Oh, true.
And it was not good. And I was called late at night.
So hard to keep up with that. Like, that's why I was saying, when I was doing Agent Carter, I wasn't sure what I was allowed to do, what I was not allowed to do. What am I allowed to say? What am I not allowed to say? It's very difficult. We actors, we just blab on.
Yeah.
Shit.
Right.
Don't think about it. Anyway.
Yeah. So Bonnie,
go ahead. Please.
Okay. I want to know about news radio, because frankly, I was obsessed with that show. And I was looking back at the cast last night and just going, oh my God.
Unbelievable.
It was such like a landmark show. I was Mark Hirschfeld's associate, and we cast the pilot. And then Paul had Jeff Greenberg cast the first season, and then I left Lieberman Hirschfeld, where I was working, and Paul Sims hired me as the caster. So my first job alone was news radio, after having cast the pilot as an associate. The pilot casting was I have so many memories of the pilot casting, because it was just like this. It was so imprinted in my brain. Stephen Root, who is one of my all-time favorite human beings,
genius.
Stephen Root created Jimmy James in his audition. He created that character. That was not on the page. He just created that character in his audition. And I remember, and this was back in the 90s, and I remember going, like, just sitting there going, this is, like, is anyone else watching this? And this is before you put videotapes in rooms, and so this is all live. So he was brilliant.
Dave Foley.
Well, Dave Foley was Paul's dream for the job. He tested against a couple other guys, but Paul really wanted Foley. Phil Hartman was attached. And then the last role was the Lisa role, was Maura Tierney's role. And we did that role, tested the morning of the table read. 3 girls, Maura and 2 other ladies. They tested live for all the executives that were there for the table read, got sent off to 3 rooms, and 1 got brought to the table. And I remember I had to go tell the others to go home.
Well, I was just afraid to leave the other 2 just sitting in the room all day waiting to hear. No, you told them.
Well,
Maura went from a trailer at the Radford lot to sitting at the table read, like literally like that.
And that also brings up a great point, because Leslie, well, all 3 of us know, but most people don't, that when you audition several times and make it through several tiers, and then you test for a pilot, and before you test for a pilot, which is the final rung, you have to sign contracts. So usually you're a fairly poor actor who is seeing the possibility of so much money in front of you.
Yeah.
And so when you don't get that part, it's not just, oh shit, I didn't get that part. It's, oh shit, I don't get to furnish my apartment the way I was just picturing.
It's
And then you watch the series run for 5-6 years and you cash those phantom paychecks every week.
Exactly.
as you know, as we all know, it's devastating.
Yes.
I mean, you know, your agent will be like, oh, but we got you a great quote. And you're like, okay, great. So what's that going to get me?
It's also devastating that for me,
I imagine.
that I've done that where you have people test and no one gets the role. And then you go back to the drawing board. And I've gone back
Holy
to the
cow.
drawing board so many times where you get no one cast.
Do you ever like, I'm sure you have you ever had to battle either the network executive and or the show creators? You're like, no, I'm telling you, this is the person. You've got blinders on because you're thinking of it only one way. You got to open your mind.
Yeah. Often. I used to have this running joke.
You win usually?
Sometimes I win. Sometimes it really depends. I have a long-standing relationship with Bruce Helford, who was the creator of the Drew Carey Show and the George Lopez Show, and we did a bunch of shows together. We worked together for over a decade, and he and I were very brotherly, sisterly. I could get in his face and argue with him and stuff. And I was casting a show, and I said, I wanted this young girl I had seen on a soap opera. And I said, she is going to be a big breakout star and we should use her for this. And you trust me. And it's ABC, it's crossover, let's do it. And he wouldn't do it. And he wouldn't do it. And I remember to this day, whenever I see him, I was like this, Kelly Ripa in his face, because he could have broken Kelly Ripa out of all my children. And he chose someone who I've completely forgotten. I've completely forgotten who we cast.
I actually tested for a pilot you did with Bruce. Into the network went me and I think like Machen Amick. Is that how you pronounce her name?
It was Freddie. It was the Freddie pilot, and it was
Freddie
Machen.
pilot.
Yes,
me or Machen Amick, and I was like, I mean, Machen Amick was on like Central Park West. She was on one of those Fox shows, like she's beautiful model, whatever, and it was like me or the model. Which one do you think's going to get it?
Well, no, because that's the thing, though. It's like you don't know who's going to get it. Unless the bigger fear for me, the bigger fear as an actor should be when you're waiting there and you all look exactly the same.
Yes,
that's your bigger fear.
You're absolutely 100%. I mean, I actually felt really good going into that because of you, and it's so nice to have that kind of relationship, and that it really. There's so many people who are making decisions in that room, or there's one major network executive or the studio executive who's making a major decision. And it's just it's so much better to be in those, for all of us, to have these different types. It's such a, I mean, it's for your, as the actor, you're like, okay, well, if I lost to Machen, they're obviously going for Machen. Completely.
If Machen lost to me, she's not going to feel badly. They were going for They were going for Leslie.
So it's interesting because I, as an actor, I don't know about you, Lise, but I have been told so many times, "Oh, she was great, but we're going to go another way."
Which is the stock answer.
Which is I used to say to my agent and manager, you know what? One of these days, I'm gonna fucking write a coffee table book going the day they went my way.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
I still get it. I'm 52 and I still get, you were great. They're going to go another way.
But I believe that's the thing, Bonnie, is like from our side of the room, we're constantly, it's funny because you start in your 20s going, was it the way I looked? Did I do terrible? Did they hate me? Like you go through all these things in your head. And the older you get, the more you go, oh, I just wasn't right for whatever reason.
This actor once said this to me, and I thought it was such a great little piece of audition advice. He said, I always look at my auditions like the 10 minutes that I actually have the role. That role is mine for those 10 minutes.
Oh, I love that.
And so he owns his time, and auditioning is such a horribly inorganic process. And now it's even less intimate because we're never going to be in the same room again.
No.
So
That's
They're all gonna be on
devastating.
tape. So let me ask you this, because it is auditioning, and for me, Lisa, I don't know about you. I have a feeling it's a flip for you. When I was back in my 20s, I got into this business. I started auditioning when I was 20 years old. I am now 52, so 32 years later. But when I was 20 and all through my 20s, I was out there more. I had more balls. I wasn't today, and the older I've gotten, I'm more nervous. I'm a little more fearful. I'm a little more scared. You would think it would be the opposite because I've
It's
been
the opposite for me.
for so many years, but I get more nervous today than I used to. I don't know what that's about. Bon, how many times have you brought in an actor and you know that actor is going to give you a solid performance? You've probably even maybe sometimes read with them prior to bringing them into a room with producers, which, like you said, is never going to happen again. But and then the actor gets in there, and I've done this numerous times on my own, and I've just fucking shat the floor right there.
happens.
It
So
happens.
what I do almost every time that happens, and it happens quite a bit. People just get nervous. I
We
just
do.
say, let's just start again. Let's just start again here. And I have enough confidence because but if you're at the point where you're coming to the the finish line and you're seeing producers or you're seeing executives, I remember Gina Torres testing for Suits. Gina Torres, who's like, she's a goddess and can do no wrong. And her voice was shaking a little bit. And Jeff Wachtel, who was the head of the network, said, you know what, go outside, take a breath and come back in. Let's just do that again.
Wow.
And she was perfect. And there was no way. I mean, she was the only one in the room. It wasn't like, the part was essentially hers, but you just get there. And I always look out for actors personally. And I'm always on the actor's side. I actually appreciate it more when it's just the two of us in a room with the camera, because we have so much room for error, and I'm only going to send that perfect tape for everyone to watch.
Should the actor ever say, I got to start over? I don't know where my head is.
Oh, if you feel that way, you should. Yeah.
Yeah.
If
How
you're
many
ever in the
times
room
less
again,
have you left an audition and gone, fuck, why didn't I say I'm not in it? Can I start over?
I have numerous times. I also will or have in the past stopped and said, I'm so sorry, can we start over? And you check yourself. But I mean, as an actor, and I guarantee every single actor out there, you walk out of the room, you get in your car, and you run the entire scene again in your head. And you might even come up with, well,
Yes.
why didn't I do that? Or you run it and go, you know what? I did a good fucking job. Personally, my goal today, and has been for a while, I want to walk in the room and I want to do a good job for you, the casting director. And it's really all I care about. I almost don't even care anymore if I get the job, just as long as I don't shit the floor in the room with the casting director. That's the most important thing to me, because I want you to keep calling me back. And if I don't do a good job, you're not going to.
And the thing is that you've really got to shit the bed for a casting director to not bring you back in for something else. Yeah. I mean, we're not like horrible people. There's a lot of forgiveness there.
Oh, of course.
But
well, how often does that happen, that an actor comes in that you love, ends up not being right for the part, but then you bring them in for something else?
Oh, all the time, I'd imagine.
It happens. I couldn't even count the times. It's endless.
Yeah.
And there's also great, stories of people who have read for other roles, and the producers have loved them and put them in a different role because they didn't get the role they auditioned for, which I think is a wonderful leap of faith that more showrunners should take.
Yes.
I've been helping actors over the pandemic with self-tapes, and there's very few auditions out there right now, but there are some. And this actress that I've been doing it with frequently, who I just adore, she read for something. We put her on tape, and it was a detective cop role or something. And then she gets a call. I haven't even talked about her yet. She got a call from her agent saying they want you to read for a different role. Great. Another cop. And I'm like, okay, that's just bad. That's just bad. I mean, that's people should really, I mean, if you can't take this audition and say, oh, she's great for detective 1 as opposed to detective 2. Yeah, it made, I forgot to ask her
But
about
Bonnie,
that.
I feel like that happens a lot. I know for me, I read for The Good Doctor probably, I'm going to say 10 times.
Uh-huh.
I finally did the show. I'd finally booked it on that 10th reading, roughly. But I remember somewhere around the 7th or 8th audition. Now, granted, I'm reading for different characters every time, so I get it. And the funny thing is, the very first read I did for Good Doctor, I booked that role. But because I was recurring on another show, ABC wouldn't let me do it. So that went away because they were both new shows on television. Okay, so second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth. And finally on the last audition, I was like, all right. I said to my agents, how many times do they need to see me? And I get it, different roles, but how many times do they need to see me to go, you know what? We're just going to throw this one a bone here because we've seen her so many times and we're always saying no. Let's throw her a bone and give her the job. And so I said to him, I was like, this will be the last audition I do. Come on, like say to them,
Yeah.
give the kid a break, would you? Like,
Let's hear from I would love to hear from Bonnie, like why that happens.
The funny thing is, as you're talking to me, I just got a text from my showrunner from Suits, who is like, this is our battle for 10 years. It was the same thing. Like, why do you keep reading the same people? We did a compilation video when the show wrapped, the series wrapped. We did a compilation casting, and each segment was listed. You know, like the people who got the role, the people who almost got the role, people who didn't get the role but now are more famous than any of our actors. And we had, and one of the things was at first you don't succeed, and we would shoot like we would show clips of like 6 different roles before the role they got.
Wow.
And it's, for me, it's crazy. It's every showrunner has something, you know, their headspace is different. For me, it's obvious. It's what I do. I know Leslie reading for this role could do this very similar role in this episode. I know that my friend who is playing cop number 1 could be cop number 2. They had names, but
yes, of course.
But it really depends on the showrunner, and I think that the showrunner has to have their own. They have to be secure enough, and it's something that a lot of them just don't have that. What's the word?
Ability to trust their instincts, or to trust your instincts.
They're trusting their own instincts.
Yeah.
Is what it is, exactly. I think they trust me for the most part. That's why we work together. But
right.
It's rare. I mean, like I did one series, just a segue. I did one series where fundamentally we were so different, the showrunners and myself, that I didn't understand why we were working together. I never got it. Like every casting session, I would pick A, they would pick Z. Like there was never any crossover of taste. And finally I just said, you guys, this isn't working. We don't have the same taste. We just aren't on the same, you know, wavelength here. And it was tedious. I had to like work against my instincts to get the show cast.
That's interesting.
Do you love what you do, Bon?
I do.
Yeah.
I think you know it. I love actors so much, and I love working with actors.
Did you come out here to get, and well, your sister's in this business, like, did you always see yourself? I mean, you didn't want to do this at first?
No, I came out here after college to hopefully be a writer. I was like applying for writer's assistance jobs and doing spec scripts of sitcoms that were on in the 90s. And I ended up working as a PA. You know, everyone starts off, and it's the 90s, or the 80s rather. So I was working on music videos. I used to, and the funny thing is, all the directors I worked for back then were like David Fincher and John Dahl and all these directors I worked for back in the 80s on music videos. And I was just working as a PA, worked as a second AD. And then I was like, I can't do this anymore. And I took off some time, and I like went to find myself for a few months. And my sister was working in casting, and she was always like run ideas by me. She's okay, what do you think of this role? And I would instantly like just write lists and lists of names. Because it's like, that's what I knew. I knew actors. Yeah. And she said, you should be doing this. And so there was a, Meg Lieberman and Mark Hirschfeld were casting directors back in the 90s. And they had this very busy, big office, and they were looking for a receptionist for 3 weeks. So my sister was working with David Rubin at the time, and she heard about it through someone, and she called them and she said, "You want to hire my sister? Has no casting experience, but she's been doing production." And they said, "Okay, we'll hire you for 3 weeks to answer phones." And that I stayed 3 years.
I mean,
I
for
love
the
that.
for the world that doesn't know anything about the business at that time in the 80s, 90s, I mean, Lieberman Hirschfeld was the casting house for television.
So we all came out of it. So it was me, and so the people who came out of that era was Sharon Klein, Grace Wu, Patrick Rush, Angela Terry, Gail Pillsbury, my partner, Stacey Alexander, who left the business afterwards. Who else was there? There was Brian Myers, Michael Catcher,
Yep.
who segued into network casting executive, and then he came back into casting.
As did Meghan and Mark too.
Well, Meg is still an executive. Meg's still head of the studio at NBC. Mark's independent, but he's also like consulting. Mark Hirschfeld is my mentor. To this day, I still reach out to Mark Hirschfeld with stuff. This is now over 25 years later, I still am reaching out to Mark Hirschfeld.
So Bonnie, when you say you came out here hoping to be a writer, came out from where and
from
where
college?
But from where were you living?
I went to Ithaca College, and I'm from Miami Beach. So I went to Miami Beach. I went home after graduation, and came out here. I came out here with $1,000. That was it. And I had a friend that I'd grown up with in Miami, and he was out here working as a PA, and we shared a basement apartment like this. We shared like a studio. We had Desi and Lucy beds that went like this. And we lived in this little space, and I lived with him for a few months. And then a friend of mine from Ithaca was moving out, and she and I got a little 2-bedroom in West Hollywood. And then I convinced my sister to move out. My sister was living in New York, and I convinced her to move out. So she ended up in casting before me. She ended up in casting. Her story is fantastic. She was house sitting for friends of ours who were on their honeymoon. And David Rubin, or Lisa Beach, who was working with David Rubin at the time, one of them called looking for her friend, saying, "We need an intern for a few weeks." She says she's on her honeymoon, but I'll do it. And that's how my sister got into casting.
That is so crazy. How something so random like that could lead to what sustains you for the rest of your life.
Right?
Yeah.
This is it's so interesting. Like Bonnie's side of the business too is so interesting, and especially to anybody who's listening who might be any advice to anybody who's listening who's wants to get into this business. Like I said, there's a million different entry points now. Anybody can do anything. Any advice?
Work on your craft. Now it's a little difficult to be in a class. I don't know how classes are working. I know there are Zoom classes.
There are, yeah.
But I think always working on your craft and not settling, and always trying. Like when I talk to actors, I'm like, coming out of college, what shows do you watch? What movies do you like? Where do you see yourself fit? And then work toward that. There's a lot of people have trouble differentiating between fame and talent.
Yes.
Some people just want to be famous, and some people actually want to work their craft. And I remember having an argument with this guy once. He was on Big Brother, and he came off Big Brother and thought that he was going to be a big actor. And I met him as a favor to whoever it was that said, "Would you sit down with him?" And he was lovely, great kid. But he's not an actor, and he's a personality. And
Exactly.
I wouldn't bring him in for something, and his agent says she's not going to bring you in. And he reached out to me, and I said, "There's a difference between this Juilliard graduate or this Carnegie Mellon graduate who spends all their free time, working on, scene study and classes and really focus, as opposed to someone who's out there, on doing reality television." And it's not the same thing.
It's not the same thing. And no offense, nothing against reality television.
No, nothing at all.
Incredibly entertained by it.
Well, the great thing now is, I think when Leslie and I were coming up in this business, you would say to people who, like, if anybody would say to me, what should I do? And I was like, well, do you want to act or do you want to be famous? Because famous ain't going to happen.
By the way, I
But
was asked that
now,
question.
say that again.
I was asked, Bob Harbin, remember Bob? Bob Harbin asked me that question. I was a 20-year-old kid and I was, starting to do stuff. And he and his boyfriend, David, who worked for my agent at the time, they were very instrumental and really kind of, moving me along. Bob cast me in Law and Order, not Law and Order, sorry, LA Law and Doogie Howser and all those shows. But he had said to me, do you want to be famous or do you want to be an actor? Like, do you want to work? And at the time, I really just wanted to do theater. So I very much wanted to just be an actor.
But the good news is now that question has an answer. Because if you do just want to be famous, do shit online, do stuff on social media, and that is a route you can actually take now.
Yeah.
You can pursue just being famous.
Yeah.
And I actually
think the most famous people in the world are famous for just being
and I
famous.
actually think that's super cool because great, there's a place for you now if you just want fame and notoriety. And then there's still a place if you really just want to do your craft. So
I need to work on my craft.
Me too.
Go into an
just
acting
do
class.
some crafts like needlepoint.
That's true. I actually love to craft. But so Bonnie, we loved having you on the show. Is there anything else crazy you want to ask Bon?
I mean, no,
Any other questions? Bonnie, let me ask you a question as an actor, especially now that we're all having to do this whole self-tape. It's so stressful. Two things. Number one, it's often that you get a call or an email from your agent that says, hey, you have an audition for this role. Here it is. It's due tomorrow at 9 a.m. You're like, well, how am I going to, I don't know how to do this. Like, how do you feel about an actor reading their lines, reading from the page, because there's not enough turnaround to really absorb it and get it into your head?
Well, here's what I'll say. That happens mostly with like guest star stuff. It doesn't happen as often with pilots.
Correct.
Pilots, you have a little bit more time.
Yes.
So we're aware of that on our end. I'm not like saying to my assistant, okay, let's wait as long as possible before sending out these appointments. We are sending them out the second we can. So we're aware of the turnaround. Now, if I give you an audition on Thursday and say it's due on Monday,
well,
I have different expectations.
Sure.
Any Monday auditions, I have very high expectations for, as opposed to 24-hour expectations. So with pilots, you have the time. You have to read the script. You have to know your sides. You don't have to be off book entirely. You should be comfortable enough to have your eyes up. And work on that too with the 24-hour turnaround. It's tough, but best you can.
Right.
You don't want to be like this. You don't want to be
Right.
on your page, but there are ways. I mean, you've been doing this long enough. There are ways that you can kind of cheat up. When you have sometimes you get these ridiculous monologues. But now it's different. Now it's all going to be like this. So you have
think
lots
even
of room
after this will continue this way?
Yeah.
Even after,
I think we're in this for at least another year. I
but
can't
after
imagine.
that, will it get back to the way it was?
Who knows? I'm not a doxer. Dr.
No,
Fauci.
I don't mean it that way. I mean, let's say COVID is gone in 2 years. It's not an issue at all. Do you think we'll be back in rooms together again?
I would hope personally that I would have at least one-on-ones.
Yeah.
I don't have my producers in the room a lot anyhow.
No, I was just going to say, we've been, we all know, we've been sort of in a world for the last almost decade where producers aren't in the room anymore. You're always going on tape with the casting director. It's sort of the way of the world now.
But even just being in the room with the casting director for on tape with the casting director is a very different feel than doing it from home by yourself.
100%.
Yes, 100%. But here's another thing. If you're stuck in this rut now that we're all stuck in, you can reach out to casting offices. That we're all sitting in our freaking basements, okay? It's not like, we're so busy.
Right.
You can, if I send an audition to you and you have questions, legit, either through your agent or through yourself, you reach out and you say, here are my questions. There's no reason at this point that anyone's too busy to answer an actor's questions as if you were in the room with us.
Yeah.
Nice. I like that a lot.
You know that.
I mean,
The whole
seriously,
thing
what am I
just
doing?
talking about it, by the way, still makes it just all makes me nervous. I don't know why I get so nervous. I wish I could just relax.
You might need try hypnosis.
Maybe I need hypnosis.
There are also beta blockers. I know actors take beta blockers before doing auditions.
What?
That calm them down. An actor told me that. I could not believe it. But anyhow, hypnosis.
No, you know
Get
what they
yourself in the
say?
way.
Nervousness is really just excitement. Does the exact same thing to your body. So just look at it as excitement less.
Yeah,
You're just excited all the time. All right, Bonnie, we're going to let you get on with your day. You have been on, this is seriously such a wealth of information that so many people don't know.
So informative. It's really.
Any more questions before we go? Any more questions?
Yeah. Do we have any more questions? God damn, I have a ton of questions.
Let's have her back on and we'll ask more. Maybe we'll get some from other people who are dying to know the ins and outs of this stuff, and we can ask you some more stuff.
I really want to why. I really want to. Wait, what were you going to say?
Why I don't decorate the basement?
Yeah. Well,
because it's a basement.
Maybe, well, because people on the West Coast, we don't have basement. The weird thing is maybe because it's Laurel Canyon, where is like, you know, everybody in the music industry started out doing drugs and all kinds of crazy shit. So maybe that's why houses in Laurel Canyon.
I thought you were going to say needing studios and you said doing drugs.
I'm talking about music industry. Anyways, but that's probably why, because all these places in Laurel Canyon had basements. Who knew?
Yeah.
I love it.
Listen, if there's an earthquake, don't go into your basement.
Okay, got it.
That's my tip for you.
Great advice.
Wait, Bontaine, one more thing. I know you're not going to, do you want to dish on it? You're not going to dish on anybody, are you? You're too kind. You should.
Dish. No, I'm not going to dish on anyone.
Of course
No,
she's
I'll tell you nice stories. I have some really fun casting stories.
Well, tell us a really casting story before we let you go.
Yes.
Okay, I'll tell you one casting story before I go. Did anyone watch Sports Night?
Are you kidding me? One of the greatest shows ever on television. At least in my opinion.
Yes, I agree. So casting the pilot of Sports Night was a long labor of love.
Well, I imagine working with him is a long.
Yeah, so it was Aaron Sorkin's first television show, and it was for Imagine. And Gail Pillsbury, who when she left Imagine, we became business partners. But Gail was the casting executive. So I read the script, which was phenomenal, the pilot script, and I said, "Well, Peter Krause is getting this part." Like I always do that to myself. Like I always have I write down my predictions. So we start the process, and Aaron Sorkin reads with the actors. I wasn't reading with the actors. Aaron reads with the actors. He wants them in his rhythms, which are very, very specific, as we all know. Mm-hmm. So Peter Krause, I schedule him to come in. I'm very excited because to me, he's the only person for the role. And I knew he was on stage. He was working on a play somewhere in Santa Monica, but I didn't know that his hair was about as long as mine, full beard, and he was like playing some beatnik. And so he comes in for this show and looking like this with Birkenstocks and like khakis, and he just looked like I didn't want to react.
Right.
And I thought, well, I knew his performance was still going to be great. And it's not about what you look like, but it sort of helps. So he reads, he was great. And Aaron thanked him and dismissed him. And I was like, fuck, that was my ringer. And Peter and I were friendly, but I was just like, oh God, this is making me, I was so frustrated. So we kept going and going and going and going, and it was taking forever. And at one point, and this was back in the 90s, this was 97. So this was like before you're scanning scripts and stuff, you're still like, carrying your scripts around, and so I called I was sitting in my office and I was working over at Mad About You over in Culver City. And I'm sitting there and like I remember just in the corner of my desk going, it has to be Peter Krause. So I call his manager. I said, has he finished the play yet? And she says, he just finished this weekend. I said, would he consider shaving? And she says, I'll ask him. I said, would you ask him to call me? So he calls me and he's like, hey, how you doing? I said, listen, would you shave and cut your hair? And he says, yeah, sure. I said, would you put on a suit? And he says, absolutely. I said, okay, get out the script. So we sat on the phone, not on this, on the phone, and we read the script together out loud. And we just read it and just talked about it. And I had been in, I'd been through a couple of hundred auditions, so I knew the role so well.
Wow, a couple of hundred?
And so I sat, that list is crazy. So I said to him, okay, now let's do this. Then we did the sides together. We talked about it. We were on the phone for, well over an hour, and we were talking and discussing the little things that I had learned in my casting sessions. And I said, okay, now here's the last step. Come back in tomorrow and say, it's nice to meet you. Don't say, nice to see you again. Don't say anything. Just say, it's nice to meet you. And go in there and just do your job. Don't say a word. Don't have a conversation. And I bring him back in. And I said, Peter Krause, I introduce him as if it's the first time he's in the room. And boom.
Amazing.
And the best part of that story is, it's my favorite casting story. The best part of that story, I was driving home one morning from the gym. It was like 7:00 in the morning. And I'm listening to Susan Stamberg on NPR, and she's interviewing Peter about 6 Feet Under. And I'm listening, and I'm just like driving up Fairfax going, this is such a great story. And then she says, so tell us about Sports Night. How did that come about? And he goes, that's a great story. My friend Bonnie Zane, and he tells the entire story that I just told you. Like,
wow.
We're on there's no two sides to that story. So he tells that story. I had to pull over. I literally pulled my car over because I was going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And I had just gotten, I think I had just gotten an Emmy nomination. And I said that day I got more phone calls about that interview on NPR than I did people congratulating me on my Emmy nomination.
It's amazing.
Because
I love it.
It was just like the best story. And that was the role.
And I love that.
Best shows.
Such a good show, but I also love that you knew the second you saw the script, and that it came around like that is amazing.
But that happens all the time. That happens all the time.
Aaron Sorkin so well to be like, come in the room and say, nice to meet you.
Right.
Don't fall back to already having
Yeah.
Smart. You're rad.
You're rad. I love talking to you girls. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming here. Listen, you know what? I think we were going to do that Ed reunion over the summer for Seth Rudetsky and the actress, and it got sort of, it sort of fell apart because of what was going on in the world. I think we should do the reunion here on the Leslie and Lisa show. Not that it has the...
Hey, don't. Yes, it does.
You're right.
Yes, it does.
Everyone was game, so.
Everyone was game. I think we should all be game.
Yeah.
We're actually going to have Julie on the show soon, so I'm going to talk to her about it too.
When you guys have Julie on the show, why don't you let me like pop in as like a surprise guest? I'll like just come on. Like you'll text me and say, hop on now, and I'll just go, hey, Jules.
Absolutely. Zoom, right?
Yes, that is. It's the best.
Yeah.
We can have like a this is your life situation.
I love it.
She's one of my favorites.
Especially because we're doing we're gonna try a couple of nighttime Leslie and Lisa shows where we have cocktails, etc.
Okay, I'll come.
Yay!
Zoom me in.
Bonnie, thank you so much.
Love you.
Love you guys. This was super fun.
Now leave.
See you soon.
Now leave.
Leaving.
The beauty of our show. Leave. You know what I have to say? I love asking people to leave. It
is really fun.
It really
now
is.
Leave.
Now leave.
So that was
incredibly insightful, right?
Not using our signs enough, Les.
Oh, shit, we're not. I know.
You're so unorganized, and you're the organized one.
No. Well, I'm crafty. I like to make them. I'm just not using them.
So she is, first of all, look, that's a lot of inside information, especially for people who don't know anything about this business. And then for people who do know about this business, but don't know all the ins and outs, like that's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, no, as an actor, you're like, it makes me think, because she's right. This audition I had last month, I got it on a Thursday and it was due Monday morning, again, self-tape. And I had it all, but when it came to doing everything Sunday night, I think I had worked on this audition. I overworked it. I worked and worked and worked, and it was one of those auditions where most of the dialogue was mine, so it felt like an 8-page monologue, essentially. And I had overworked it to a point where I forgot everything.
And you
literally-
were up till like 4 a.m. taping
It
it.
was 2 a.m. It was awful. It was a really tough experience. I think I pulled something out of my ass that's never happened to me before. I think the more I would do it, the more I would stop because I didn't know it, then the more the fear just kept loading on. And
You know, it's something to say. You've been in this business for over 30 years, and I think people would go, what is she like? Why is she still nervous? But you're always nervous to perform. If you're not,
Yeah.
there's something wrong.
yeah, we all are.
Yeah, I didn't mean you. I mean people.
Oh, I thought you meant me, and I was like, I am.
I
You never
meant-
listen
I
to a therapy session.
Every performer is always nervous for
Always.
the next
God,
performance.
if you don't have butterflies in your stomach before you're about to go, then something's wrong with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Les, I'm going to now say that we should kick ourselves out.
Yes, we should. How
That
long
was
this? Jeez,
super-
that was awesome, though.
Fantastic.
Yep.
And you have a great day. I adore you.
I adore you as well. Tell people where they can find us.
They can find us, obviously, on YouTube at The Lisa and Leslie Show. And we want you to like, and we want you to subscribe, and we want you to be part of our community. Also, follow us on social media at The Leslie and Lisa Show, or at Lisa Arch, or at Leslie Boone, because we're going to be putting stuff up to help get you involved in the show and be part of our community. But the most important thing right now is to subscribe, baby, so we can and sign up for
Keep
notifications.
doing this. Well, we'll keep doing this even if you don't subscribe.
We
That's
will,
not
whether or not you're watching, we'll still be here.
exactly.
Oh,
right.
and if you're looking for the Leslie and Lisa Show podcast, it's in the same place. Just don't watch us, only listen.
Yeah, I was just going to say, people have been asking. I'm like, just, turn the Leslie and Lisa Show on and then put your device down and just listen on your earbuds.
Then it's a
It's
podcast.
Oh, we
Les-
said it at the same time. I love you, Lise.
Love you. Don't go, because we're going to fade out.
Oh, okay.
Okay.